What happens when a royal guest forgets that respect goes both ways? In just 38 seconds, Prince Harry went from honored guest to persona non grata on one of America's most beloved late-night stages. This is the story of how a conversation turned into a confrontation that nobody saw coming. The Jimmy Kimmel live studio was packed that night. The audience buzzed with excitement. A real prince was about to sit down for what everyone thought would be a friendly chat. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and Jimmy Kimmel walked out to thunderous applause wearing his signature smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," Jimmy announced, extending his hand as Harry walked onto the stage. The audience erupted. Harry waved, buttoned his jacket, and sat down in the guest chair. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. But within minutes, the temperature in that studio was about to change completely. "So, great to have you here," Jimmy started, leaning back in his chair. "I have to say, I've been looking forward to this conversation." "Yes, well, I'm here, aren't I?" Harry replied, his tone already carrying an edge that made a few audience members glance at each other. Jimmy laughed it off. "You are indeed. So, let's talk about your life in California. You've been here for a while now. How are you adjusting to American life?" Harry shifted in his seat. "I think the better question is, how is America adjusting to having me here?" The audience laughed nervously. Jimmy's smile tightened just slightly. "Well, I think we're doing okay with it. But tell me, what do you miss most about England?" "The respect," Harry said flatly. "People there understand protocol. They understand who they're speaking to." Jimmy blinked. "Right. Well, here in America, we're a bit more casual, as you probably noticed." "Oh, I've noticed," Harry said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I've noticed quite a lot, actually. The energy in the room shifted. You could feel it." The audience went quiet. Jimmy sat up a little straighter. "Okay, well, let's talk about something positive." Jimmy tried again, keeping his composure. "You've been involved in a lot of charitable work. That's something we can all appreciate." "Yes, I have," Harry said. "Though I doubt most of your viewers would understand the level of commitment it requires. It's not just writing a check, it's actual work." Jimmy's jaw clenched for just a moment. "I think our viewers understand charity pretty well, actually. A lot of people here work very hard to give back to their communities." "I'm sure they think they do," Harry replied with a dismissive wave. That was it. That was the moment. You could see it in Jimmy's eyes. The host who built his career on kindness and humor was not going to let this slide. "You know what?" Jimmy said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm going to stop you right there. I invited you on this show as a guest. I welcomed you into this space. And you're sitting here insulting my audience." "I'm simply stating facts," Harry shot back. "If that's insulting to them, perhaps they should examine why." The audience gasped. Actual gasps echoed through the studio. Jimmy put his hands on his desk and leaned forward. "No, you're not stating facts. You're being rude. You're being condescending. And honestly, you're being a terrible guest." Harry's face flushed red. "Excuse me? Do you know who you're speaking to?" "Yeah, I do," Jimmy said, his voice steady and strong. "I'm speaking to someone who apparently thinks a title means you can talk down to people. Newsflash, it doesn't. Not here. Not in my studio." "Your studio?" Harry laughed bitterly. "This is television. You're just the person they hired to fill the chair." The audience was dead silent now. You could hear every breath, every shift in every seat. Jimmy nodded slowly. "Right. The person they hired. The person who's been doing this job for years. The person who shows up every night and treats every guest with respect, even the ones who clearly don't deserve it." "How dare you?" Harry stood up from his chair. "I have been through more than you could possibly imagine. I have sacrificed more than you will ever know. And that gives you the right to be disrespectful?" Jimmy stood up too, matching his energy. "We all have our struggles. We all have our pain. But most of us don't use it as an excuse to treat other people like garbage." Harry pointed at Jimmy, his hand shaking. "You have no idea what it's like to live under the scrutiny I've lived under. The pressure, the expectations." "You're absolutely right," Jimmy said. "I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it's like to work for everything I have. I know what it's like to earn respect instead of expecting it because of who my family is." The audience began to applaud. Slowly at first, then building. Harry looked around, his face a mixture of shock and rage. "This is ridiculous," Harry said. "I came here as a courtesy to you." "A courtesy?" Jimmy's eyebrows shot up. "You think coming on a talk show is doing me a favor?" Let me tell you something. This show has hosted presidents, actors, musicians, athletes, and yes, even royalty. And every single one of them knew how to be gracious. Every single one of them knew how to have a conversation without insulting everyone around them. Harry's voice rose. I don't have to listen to this from someone like you. Someone like me? Jimmy repeated. What does that mean exactly? Someone who makes a living telling jokes and playing games? Harry sneered. Someone who thinks they're important because they have a television show. The audience booed. Actually booed. Jimmy held up his hand to quiet them. You know what the difference is between us? Jimmy asked, his voice cutting through the noise. I know, I'm lucky. I know I'm fortunate to have this platform. And I use it to try to make people laugh, to make them think, to maybe make their day a little better. What do you use your platform for? Based on tonight, it seems like you use it to remind everyone that you think you're better than them. Harry's face was purple now. I am better than them. I am better than you. That's just the reality. The studio erupted. People were shouting. Some were booing. Some were just staring in disbelief. Jimmy shook his head. No, you're not. You're just a person, like everyone else. And the sooner you figure that out, the happier you'll be. But you're not going to figure it out here. Not tonight. What are you saying? Harry demanded. I'm saying this interview is over, Jimmy said clearly. I'm saying you need to leave. Harry laughed, but it was hollow. You're kicking me out? You can't kick me out. Actually, I can, Jimmy replied. This is my show. These are my people. And I'm not going to let you sit here and disrespect them for one more second. This is outrageous, Harry sputtered. Do you have any idea what this will do to your reputation? My reputation? Jimmy smiled, but it wasn't friendly. My reputation is that I stand up for what's right. My reputation is that I don't let bullies push people around, no matter what their last name is. I can live with that. Harry looked at the audience, as if expecting them to come to his defense. Instead, they stared back at him with cold eyes. Some shook their heads. Others crossed their arms. You're making a huge mistake, Harry said, his voice desperate now. The only mistake I made was thinking you were worth my time, Jimmy responded. Security will show you out. Two large men in suits appeared from the wings. They didn't touch Harry, but they stood close enough to make their presence known. This isn't over, Harry said, backing toward the stage exit. Yeah, it is, Jimmy said firmly. It's very over. Harry stood there for another moment, looking like he wanted to say something else, but the Dunsum audience had started chanting, Jimmy! 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 The sound grew louder and louder. Finally, Harry turned and walked off the stage, his shoulders rigid, his fists clenched. The security guards followed close behind. As soon as he disappeared into the wings, the audience erupted into applause. People were standing, cheering, whistling. Jimmy stood at his desk, taking deep breaths. He looked shaken, but also relieved. He raised his hand to quiet the crowd. I'm sorry you all had to see that, Jimmy said, his voice tired but sincere. That's not what we're about here. We're about having fun. We're about celebrating people and their stories. But I also believe that everyone deserves respect. The people who work on this show, the people sitting in this audience, the people watching at home, and I won't compromise on that. Not for anyone. The applause came again, even louder this time. Someone in the audience shouted, "We love you, Jimmy." Jimmy smiled, a real smile this time. I love you guys too, and I'm grateful every single day that I get to do this. But man, some guests make it harder than others. The audience laughed, and the tension finally broke. Jimmy looked at the camera. We're going to take a quick break, he said. When we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of this show. Maybe we'll play a game. Maybe we'll show some funny videos. Anything to wash the taste of that out of our mouths. As the show cut to commercial, Jimmy sat down in his chair and ran his hands through his hair. His team rushed onto the stage, everyone talking at once. But Jimmy just waved them off. He stood up again and walked to the edge of the stage, looking out at the audience. Thank you for having my back, he said quietly, though the microphone still picked it up. That was intense. You did the right thing, someone from the audience called out. Jimmy nodded. I hope so. I really hope so. Backstage, Harry was reportedly furious. He was pacing in the hallway, making phone calls, demanding to speak to someone in charge, but everyone avoided him. The production assistants, the camera operators. Even the other guests scheduled for later in the show suddenly had somewhere else to be. Meanwhile, on stage, Jimmy composed himself. The commercial break ended. The cameras came back on. And Jimmy did what he always does. He made people laugh. He told stories. He played a silly game with audience members. He reminded everyone why they loved watching him in the first place. But nobody forgot what happened in those heated minutes. The confrontation. The accusations. The moment when Harry said he was better than everyone else. The moment when Jimmy said, "No, you're not." The moment when a prince got kicked off a talk show because he forgot that respect isn't given, it's earned. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. On one side, a man who believed his birthright made him superior. On the other, a man who worked his way up from nothing and never forgot where he came from. On one side, entitlement and arrogance. On the other, humility and principle. Jimmy could have let it go. He could have laughed it off, made a joke, moved on to the next question. But he didn't, because some things are more important than keeping a show running smoothly. Some things are more important than avoiding conflict. Standing up for your team, standing up for your audience, standing up for basic human decency. Those things matter, and Harry could have been gracious. He could have been charming. He could have used his platform to connect with people, to share his story in a way that brought everyone together. But he chose differently. He chose to punch down. He chose to belittle. He chose to act like the rules didn't apply to him. The really striking thing was how quickly it all fell apart. 1 minute, polite conversation. The next, open hostility. It didn't build slowly. It exploded. Like all the resentment and entitlement Harry had been carrying just burst out in one toxic flood. "I have been through more than you could possibly imagine," he had said. And maybe that was true. But suffering doesn't give anyone a license to make others suffer. Pain doesn't justify causing pain. And privilege definitely doesn't excuse being rude. Jimmy understood something that Harry clearly didn't. Being on television isn't about showing everyone how great you are. It's about connection. It's about meeting people where they are. It's about making them feel something, whether that's laughter or understanding or hope. When Harry said, "You're just the person they hired to fill the chair," he revealed everything. He didn't see Jimmy as a professional, as someone with talent and skills and years of experience. He saw him as replaceable, as beneath him, as not worthy of respect. But the audience saw something different. They saw Jimmy as one of them, as someone who worked hard and earned his success, as someone who didn't ask for special treatment or expect the world to bow down. And when Harry attacked him, they felt attacked too. That's why the booing happened. That's why the chanting happened. Because Jimmy represented them and Harry represented everything they couldn't stand. Entitlement, arrogance, the belief that some people are just inherently better than others. "My reputation is that I stand up for what's right," Jimmy had said. And in that moment, he proved it. He could have stayed quiet. He could have taken the insults. He could have finished the interview and complained about it later to his producers. But he didn't. He drew a line. He said, "This far, no further." The security guards didn't have to drag Harry out. He walked on his own. But the message was clear. You can have all the titles in the world. You can have all the money, all the fame, all the pedigree. But if you don't treat people with respect, none of it matters. None of it protects you. None of it gives you a pass. As Harry disappeared backstage, as the audience cheered, as Jimmy took control of his show again, something shifted. Power dynamics reversed. The prince became the villain. The comedian became the hero. Not because of their backgrounds or their status, but because of their choices, because of how they treated other people. Jimmy's voice when he said, "This interview is over," wasn't angry. It was disappointed. Like a parent who expected better. Like someone who genuinely wished things had gone differently. But he didn't back down. He didn't soften his stance. He made the call and he stood by it. And Harry's reaction to being asked to leave showed his true character. Not gracious, not apologetic, threatening. "You're making a huge mistake," he said. "This isn't over." Still trying to intimidate, still trying to control the situation, still believing that he could bend reality to his will just by insisting on it. But reality doesn't work that way. Actions have consequences. Words have weight. And when you go on television and insult everyone around you, when you talk down to people who welcomed you into their space, when you act like basic courtesy doesn't apply to you, you lose. You lose the audience. You lose the respect. You lose the opportunity. The audience chanting Jimmy's name wasn't just support for their host. It was a rejection of everything Harry represented. It was them saying, "We don't care about your title. We care about how you treat people, and you failed that test." Throughout the whole confrontation, Jimmy never raised his voice to a shout. He stayed calm, he stayed controlled, but he also stayed firm. There was no wavering, no second guessing. He made his point clearly and he backed it up with action. "What do you use your platform for?" he had asked Harry. It was a devastating question, because the answer, based on that night, was nothing good. Harry used his platform to elevate himself by putting others down, to remind everyone of his specialness, to create distance between himself and regular people instead of bridging it. Compare that to Jimmy, who uses his platform to make people laugh, to shine a light on important issues, to give other people a chance to share their stories, to create moments of joy and connection in a world that often feels dark and divided. The difference was stark. One man understood that a platform is a responsibility, the other thought it was a throne. When Harry said, "Someone who thinks they're important because they have a television show," he was projecting. Because Harry was the one who thought he was important, not because of anything he had done, but because of the family he was born into. Jimmy knew his show didn't make him important. His show was just his job. A job he loved, a job he was good at, but still just a job. What made the confrontation so powerful was the honesty. Jimmy didn't hide behind politeness. He didn't try to smooth things over for the cameras. He said exactly what he was thinking. "You're being rude, you're being condescending, and honestly, you're being a terrible guest." No sugarcoating, just truth. And Harry couldn't handle it, because he was used to people tolerating his behavior, used to people making excuses for him, used to getting away with things because of who he was. But Jimmy didn't care about any of that. He cared about respect, and when Harry couldn't show it, Jimmy showed him the door. The moment when Jimmy said, "You're not going to figure it out here, not tonight," was almost sad, because you could hear the finality in it, the recognition that this wasn't going to get better, that sometimes people are so stuck in their own perspective, so convinced of their own rightness, that conversation becomes impossible. Harry asking, "You're kicking me out? You can't kick me out," revealed his shock. He genuinely didn't believe it could happen. That's how insulated he was. That's how convinced he was of his own untouchability. The idea that there could be consequences for his behavior seemed to genuinely surprise him. But Jimmy did it anyway. And in doing so, he sent a message that rippled far beyond that studio. He said that character matters more than pedigree, that how you treat people matters more than your title, that basic human decency isn't negotiable, no matter who you are. The audience, standing and cheering, wasn't mob mentality. It was recognition. They recognized themselves in Jimmy. They recognized their own experiences of being talked down to, of being dismissed, of being treated as less than, and they celebrated seeing someone stand up and say, "Not here, not anymore." Jimmy's apology to the audience afterward showed his class. "I'm sorry you all had to see that," he said, taking responsibility for the awkwardness even though he wasn't the one who caused it, showing concern for their experience, making sure they knew that what happened wasn't normal, wasn't acceptable, wasn't what his show was about. And his statement about respect, about how everyone deserves it, reinforced why people love him. He wasn't just talking about himself. He was talking about his crew, his audience, his viewers. All the people who Harry had casually dismissed, Jimmy saw them. Jimmy valued them. Jimmy stood up for them. The image of Harry pacing backstage, making angry phone calls, demanding to speak to someone in charge, was fitting. Still trying to control the narrative, still trying to use influence to undo the consequences of his actions, still not understanding that the problem wasn't how other people reacted. The problem was how he behaved. Meanwhile, Jimmy went back to work, did his job, made people laugh, reminded everyone why they tuned in every night. He didn't dwell on the drama. He didn't milk it for attention. He just moved forward the way professionals do. But the contrast lingered between grace and arrogance, between humility and entitlement, between someone who earned their place and someone who inherited it, between someone who used their voice to lift others up and someone who used it to put them down. In 38 seconds, everything changed. In the time it takes to brush your teeth or tie your shoes, a guest went from welcome to expelled, not because of a misunderstanding, not because of a joke gone wrong, but because of a fundamental failure of character. Harry's words hung in the air long after he left. "I am better than them. I am better than you. That's just the reality." And Jimmy's response echoed just as loud. "No, no, you're not. You're just a person, like everyone else." That exchange captured everything. The collision of two worldviews, one built on hierarchy and inherited status, one built on equality and earned respect. And in that collision, only one could win. The audience made their choice clear. They chose kindness over cruelty. They chose humility over arrogance. They chose Jimmy. And in doing so, they chose the values he represented. The values that say every person has worth, that say respect is mutual, that say no one is above basic decency. Jimmy, standing at the edge of the stage, thanking the audience for having his back, showed his humanity. He was shaken, he was tired, but he was also grateful. Grateful for their support. Grateful that they understood what he was trying to do. Grateful that he didn't have to stand alone, and they were grateful too. Grateful that someone finally said what needed to be said. That someone didn't let bad behavior slide. That someone showed that principles matter, even when they're inconvenient, even when they're uncomfortable, even when they cost you something. The whole confrontation was a masterclass in contrasts. Harry's voice getting louder as he lost control, Jimmy's voice staying steady as he took it. Harry pointing fingers, Jimmy keeping his hands on his desk, Harry making threats, Jimmy making boundaries. Every moment reinforced who was in the right. Not because Jimmy was perfect, but because he was principled. Not because he never made mistakes, but because he knew how to treat people. Not because he had all the answers, but because he asked the right questions. What do you use your platform for? That question deserved an answer. A real answer about making a difference, about helping people, about contributing something positive to the world. But Harry couldn't give that answer, because he was too busy proving he didn't understand the question. A platform isn't about elevation, it's about amplification. It's about taking what you care about and making it reach further. Jimmy understood that. He amplified laughter, joy, connection, human moments that brought people together. What did Harry amplify that night? His own ego, his own grievances, his own sense of superiority. The security guards flanking Harry as he left weren't just doing their job. They were making a statement. This behavior has consequences. This attitude has limits. This treatment of others will not be tolerated. Not here, not now, not ever. And Harry, walking away, shoulders rigid, fists clenched, unable to even attempt graciousness in defeat, proved that Jimmy made the right call. Because someone who can't accept being wrong is someone who can never grow. Someone who can't admit fault is someone who can't change. Someone who can't show humility is someone who can't truly connect. The show going on afterward, with games and laughter and lightness, showed resilience. It showed that one person's toxicity doesn't have to poison everything, that you can acknowledge something ugly happened and still choose joy, that you can stand up for what's right and then keep moving forward. That's what made Jimmy the hero of this story. Not that he confronted Harry. Anyone can confront someone, but that he did it with dignity, that he explained himself clearly, that he never stooped to the same level, that he protected his people without becoming cruel himself, that he drew a line without becoming the bully. And that's what made Harry the villain. Not that he disagreed with Jimmy, people disagree all the time, but that he treated everyone around him as lesser, that he demanded respect while showing none, that he used his pain as a weapon instead of a bridge, that he saw his title as armor that let him hurt others without consequence. The 38 seconds that changed everything weren't just about two men arguing, they were about values colliding, about the choice between building people up or tearing them down, about whether you use whatever power you have to help or to harm. Jimmy chose to help. Even in confrontation, he was trying to help, trying to show Harry that this path led nowhere good, trying to protect his audience from further insults, trying to maintain a space where people felt valued and respected. Harry chose to harm. Maybe without fully realizing it, maybe so caught up in his own narrative that he couldn't see how his words landed. But impact matters more than intent. And the impact of his words was damage. The standing ovation for Jimmy wasn't just applause, it was validation. It was the audience saying, yes, this is how we want to be treated. Yes, this is the standard we expect. Yes, this is the kind of person we want to support. And the booing for Harry wasn't just disapproval, it was rejection. It was the audience saying, no, this behavior is not acceptable. No, your title doesn't impress us. No, we don't want what you're selling. In the end, the confrontation wasn't about royalty versus celebrity. It wasn't about British versus American. It wasn't about tradition versus modernity. It was about respect versus contempt, about earned versus inherited, about character versus credentials. And character won, as it always should, as it always must. Because without character, nothing else matters. All the titles in the world can't make up for a lack of basic human decency. All the privilege in the maybe a spy world can't protect you from the consequences of treating others poorly. Jimmy proved that night that standing up for what's right doesn't require a title, it doesn't require permission. It just requires courage. The courage to say, this isn't okay. The courage to enforce your boundaries. The courage to let someone walk away rather than tolerate mistreatment. And Harry proved that all the advantages in the world can't save you from yourself. That you can have every opportunity and still choose badly. That you can have a platform and use it to push people away instead of bringing them together. The 38 seconds told us everything we needed to know about who these men were, about what they valued, about how they saw the world and their place in it. And once we knew, there was no going back. No pretending it didn't happen. No unseeing what we saw. Jimmy stood his ground and became more beloved for it. Harry left the stage and left behind a stain on his reputation that no title could wash away. One moment, one choice. Everything changed.